Daniel Mercer gripped the hospital corridor's cold metal railing, his knuckles turning white. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across his face as he tried to process what the doctor had just told him. His wife Clara had given birth an hour ago, but the baby wasn't his. He pushed through the door to her recovery room, his heart pounding against his ribs. Clara lay in the hospital bed, her auburn hair splayed across the pillow, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. In the bassinet beside her lay an infant whose features told an undeniable truth. "Daniel," Clara whispered, tears already streaming down her cheeks, "I can explain." "Explain?" His voice cracked, raw with betrayal. "Explain how you've been lying to me for months? How you let me believe this child was mine?" She reached for him, but he stepped back as if her touch would burn. "It was a mistake. I was lonely. You were always working, always focused on the business. So you found comfort in someone else's arms?" Daniel's laugh was bitter, hollow. "We've been married 7 years, Clara. 7 years of promises, of building a life together. Was any of it real?" The night nurse knocked softly before entering, sensing the tension. Daniel turned away, staring out the window at the city lights below. His reflection stared back, a man whose entire world had just collapsed. "His name is Marcus," Clara said quietly, "from the gym. It only happened a few times, I swear. I thought I could pretend that maybe I wouldn't notice." Daniel turned back to her, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. He'd moved past tears into something colder, more final. "I gave you everything, Clara, my trust, my future, my heart, and you threw it away." He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. "I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce proceedings. You can keep the house. I don't want anything that reminds me of this lie." "Daniel, please!" Clara's sobs echoed down the hallway as he walked away, each step feeling like he was leaving behind not just his wife, but the man he used to be. The devoted husband, the trusting partner. That Daniel Mercer died tonight in a hospital room filled with betrayal. 3 weeks later, Daniel sat in his new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the skeletal furniture of a life being rebuilt from scratch. The divorce papers lay on his coffee table, already signed. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from Clara, apologies, explanations, desperate pleas, but he'd stopped reading them after the first few days. The entrepreneurial fire that had once driven him now felt like cold ash. His business partner, James, had been covering for him, but Daniel knew he couldn't hide forever. Work had always been his sanctuary, but now even that felt tainted by memories of Clara's accusations that he'd neglected their marriage. On a gray Saturday morning, Daniel forced himself to leave the apartment. The local farmers' market stretched along the waterfront, bustling with weekend crowds. He wandered aimlessly through the stalls, not really seeing the colorful produce or handmade crafts, until he literally bumped into someone at the coffee vendor. "Oh, I'm so sorry," he started, then stopped. The woman he'd collided with was striking in an otherworldly way. She had golden blonde hair that cascaded in loose waves past her shoulders, but it was her other features that made him stare. Soft, triangular ears, fox-like and covered in fine golden fur, poked through her hair, twitching slightly at the sounds around them. A long, fluffy tail swished behind her, the same golden blonde as her hair, with a white tip. "No harm done," she said with a warm smile, her green eyes sparkling with amusement, "though you did save my coffee from ending up all over my dress." She gestured to her sundress, which complemented her unique appearance. Her hands, perfectly human aside from slightly elongated nails, steadied her cup. "I wasn't watching where I was going," Daniel admitted, suddenly self-conscious. Despite her unusual features, there was something immediately comforting about her presence. "Neither was I, actually. I was distracted by those amazing pastries over there." She pointed with her free hand to a nearby bakery stall. "I'm Naomi, by all means. Naomi Bennett." "Daniel Mercer," he replied, shaking her hand. Her touch was warm, her grip confident but gentle. "You look like you could use one of those pastries, Daniel, and maybe someone to talk to." Naomi's tail swayed gently, and her fox ears tilted toward him with genuine concern. "I happen to be excellent at both recommending baked goods and listening." Daniel found himself sitting across from Naomi at a small cafe table, a chocolate croissant he hadn't planned to buy cooling on a plate between them. The morning sun caught the golden highlights in her blonde waves, and her ears twitched occasionally as she listened to the ambient sounds around them, a trait he found oddly endearing. "So," Naomi said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug, her tail curling around the chair leg, "what brings someone to the farmer's market with such a lost expression? Broke up with your favorite vegetable vendor?" Despite himself, Daniel laughed, the first genuine laugh in weeks. "Is it that obvious?" "I'm a teacher," she replied with a gentle smile. "Third grade. I've learned to read people pretty well. You don't have to share if you don't want to, but sometimes talking to a stranger helps." Something about her openness, the way her green eyes held no judgment, made the words tumble out. He told her about Clara, about the hospital, about the betrayal that had shattered his world. Naomi listened without interrupting, her ears occasionally folding back in sympathy, her tail's movements reflecting her emotional responses to his story. I can't imagine how much that hurt," she said softly when he finished. "Betrayal from someone you trusted completely? It's like the ground disappearing beneath your feet." "Exactly," Daniel breathed, surprised by how accurately she'd captured the feeling. "Everyone keeps telling me I'll get over it, that time heals all wounds. But right now, it feels impossible," Naomi finished. "And that's okay. You don't have to rush healing. You don't have to forgive. You just have to survive one day at a time until those days start getting easier." She reached across the table, her hand hovering near his. "May I?" When he nodded, she placed her hand over his. Her touch was warm, comforting, and somehow not at all strange despite her unique nature. "I went through something similar 2 years ago," she admitted. "Not infidelity, but betrayal. My ex-fiancé left me because he said my condition," she gestured to her ears and tail, "was too difficult to explain to his family, too embarrassing." "He was an idiot," Daniel said immediately, surprising himself with his vehemence. Naomi's smile brightened her entire face, her tail swishing with pleasure. "Thank you. And for what it's worth, Daniel, you're gonna be okay." Over the following weeks, Daniel and Naomi's chance encounter blossomed into genuine friendship. They met for coffee, took walks along the waterfront, and gradually, the heaviness in Daniel's chest began to ease. Naomi had a way of making him feel seen and understood, without pity, and her unique appearance, which others sometimes stared at, became something he cherished. The way her ears perked up when she was excited, how her tail betrayed her emotions even when she tried to hide them, it was all distinctly, wonderfully Naomi. One evening, she invited him to her apartment for dinner. "Fair warning," she said as she opened the door, her tail swishing nervously. "I'm an experimental cook. Sometimes it works out brilliantly, sometimes we order pizza." Her apartment was warm and eclectic, filled with student artwork, books, and cozy throws. As they cooked together, or rather as Naomi cooked while Daniel chopped vegetables, they talked about everything and nothing. Her ears would flatten when she concentrated on a difficult step, and Daniel found himself wanting to reach out and touch them, to run his fingers through that golden fur. After dinner, they sat on her couch with glasses of wine, the comfortable silence of people who'd grown genuinely close. Naomi's tail was draped across the cushions, and Daniel noticed how the lamplight made her blonde hair glow. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said quietly. "Of course." Her green eyes met his, open and trusting. "Does it bother you when people stare?" Naomi's ears twitched thoughtfully. "Sometimes," But I've learned that the people who matter see beyond the tail and ears. They see me, Naomi, the woman who loves terrible puns and cries during animated movies and believes every student deserves patience and kindness." She turned to face him fully. "You've never made me feel strange or different, Daniel. You've just seen me." "Because you're extraordinary," he whispered, his hand reaching up to gently touch one of her soft fox ears. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly, a small sound of pleasure escaping her lips. "Daniel," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but when her hands slid into his hair and her tail wrapped around his leg, it deepened. All the loneliness, the hurt, the fear of trusting again melted away in the warmth of her embrace. They moved to her bedroom, hands exploring, hearts racing. Naomi's unique features only made her more beautiful to Daniel. The softness of her ears under his fingers, the way her tail curled around him, drawing him closer. She helped him unbutton his shirt, her touch both gentle and eager, and when they finally came together, it was with a tenderness born of mutual understanding and growing love. "You're trembling," Naomi whispered against his shoulder, her blonde waves spilling across the pillow. "I haven't, not since—" Daniel couldn't finish the sentence. "I know." She cupped his face in her hands, her green eyes shining in the moonlight filtering through the curtains. "This isn't that. This is us, Daniel. Just us, choosing to trust again." Their lovemaking was slow, exploratory, filled with whispered reassurances and genuine connection. Naomi's tail wrapped around his thigh, holding him close, while her hands traced patterns across his back. When they finally lay spent in each other's arms, Daniel felt something shift inside him, not the erasure of his pain, but the beginning of something new growing beside it. "Stay," Naomi murmured, her head resting on his chest, one ear twitching as she listened to his heartbeat. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised, kissing the top of her head. 6 months later, Daniel stood in Naomi's apartment, their apartment now, watching her prepare for her classroom's parent-teacher night. She was nervous, her tail swishing rapidly as she organized papers, but when he wrapped his arms around her from behind, she relaxed into him. "You're amazing," he whispered into her hair, right between her fox ears. "Those kids are lucky to have you." "And I'm lucky to have you," she replied, turning in his arms to kiss him softly. The divorce from Clara was finalized. His business was thriving again. But most importantly, Daniel had learned that betrayal wasn't the end of his story. It was simply the closing of one painful chapter and the beginning of one filled with genuine love, trust, and a beautiful woman with golden fox ears who taught him that healing was possible. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with a perfect start, but with two broken people choosing to trust again, together. The end.